Hello, great people. The leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu, has defeated Nigerian government in faraway Kenya as a Kenyan High Court has declared his abduction and rendition to Nigeria illegal. Not only that, the court also awarded 10 million Kenyan shillings as damages to Nnamdi Kanu. So as it stands now, the Kenyan government is owing Nnamdi Kanu 10 million Kenyan shillings. On this episode of Politics with Joshua Plug, Dr. Omosholadeji, I will be telling you how Nnamdi Kanu was able to defeat the mighty Nigerian government in court. I will be unveiling to you some of the things that transpired in court, and also I will be reading to you the excerpt of the judgment that was delivered in Kenya. Then when we are done with that, we'll also be diving into the realm of international relation and diplomacy. How was Nnamdi Kanu abducted, and what is the international policy as regards rendition? What is even rendition and extraordinary rendition as the case of Nnamdi Kanu? We'll be learning all this and more on this episode with Joshua Plug, Dr. Omosholadeji. First, let me tell you about the case in Kenya, and that case was handled by someone called Justice E.C. Mwita. Justice E.C. Mwita is of the Kenyan High Court, and the Justice Mwita, having reviewed the case, declared that Nigerian government and Kenyan government violated the right of Nnamdi Kanu. The judge had strong words for Nigerian government and the Kenyan government. The court said, well, having looked at this, having looked at the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the Constitution of Kenya, and looking at the various international laws, you Nigerian government, you Kenyan government, you have violated the fundamental human right of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. So therefore, the court was able to establish that truly Nnamdi Kanu was abducted illegally, that Nnamdi Kanu was detained illegally, and Nnamdi Kanu was renditioned to Nigeria illegally. That is 3 in 1: illegal adoption, illegal detention, and illegal rendition. So the court declared that his abduction, his detention, and rendition in 2001 were unlawful and illegal. Before I tell you the meaning of rendition, let me first of all tell you what gave birth to this particular case. You will recall that the Buhari government illegally abducted Mazi Nnamdi Kanu from Kenya, and when the case was going on, the team of Nnamdi Kanu, they tried to get justice in Nigeria. They tried to argue the case, but then the case has some political undertone, so they were not making headway. So they decide that they will institute a case in Kenya. And when they institute the case dragged on and on. The Nigerian government, as expected, was trying to use its kind of like diplomacy, but then kudos to the Kenyan judiciary. The Kenyan judiciary stood firm and was able to deliver judgment in favor of Nnamdi Kanu. And before I tell you the meaning of rendition, you'll be hearing rendition, and extraordinary rendition. Shout out to the legal team of Nnamdi Kanu. Shout out to his friends and family, because to get judgment in faraway Kenya is indeed not an easy thing, and they stood firm and they were able to pursue the case to the end. Now, what is rendition in this case? Because the court said that Nnamdi Kanu's rendition to Nigeria was illegal. Now, the rendition is a legal process whereby if somebody is a criminal, if somebody has committed a crime and that person is found overseas, if that person is found in a foreign country, the process of bringing back the person to the country that the person has allegedly committed the crime is called rendition. So the process that Nigerian government under Muhammadu Buhari should have passed through to make sure that Nnamdi Kanu was brought back to Nigeria is called rendition. And there are some rules and regulations that must be followed in that regard. But the Buhari government decided to use the back door. They decided to use what they can call, the corner tactics to get judgment, and at the end of the day it eventually backfired. So you can see that the injustice of the Buhari government is now kind of like set aside by the court. But it would have been great if Buhari is still in power to witness how the court have given judgment. But then the Bola Ahmed Tinubu government is not much different from the Buhari government, and I'll be touching on that in a while. So that process that should have been followed to rendition Nnamdi Kanu to Nigeria wasn't followed. So if you don't follow the process, it becomes extraordinary rendition. The right word should be illegal rendition, but they call it extraordinary rendition. That means that you are using extra process. You are using a kind of like a process that is not stated in the law. That is what we can call beyond the law. That is extraordinary rendition. And that now the Kenyan court has declared that it is illegal. Now let me read the judgment of the court to you, and you would see what the judge, Justice Mwita, has to say when delivering the judgment. The judge said, having considered the pleadings and argument by parties and decisions relied on, the Constitution and the law. Again, I'll take that again. Having considered the pleadings, 1, 2, the argument by parties, 3, the decisions relied on, 4, the Constitution, 5, and the law. I think, the Kenyan judiciary really deserves a round of applause, because look at the intelligence at which the judge is giving his judgment. So Justice Nwita said, I come to the following conclusions. Now I'm reading the direct quote from the judgment. It says, first, the government of Kenya violated the Constitution and Mr. Nnamdi Kanu's rights and fundamental freedoms. Having entered Kenya lawfully, he was subjected to the protection offered by the Constitution of Kenya 2010, and the government of Kenya had an obligation to uphold and protect its rights and fundamental freedoms. Mr. Nnamdi was, however, abducted. Don't forget, I'm reading to you the direct quote from the judgment. It says, Mr. Nnamdi was, however, abducted, kept in solitude confinement, tortured, and denied food and medication, a breach of basic rights. He was chained, humiliated, ridiculed, and held in contempt, and later forcibly removed from Kenya without following the laws, in violations of his rights and fundamental freedom, for which the government of Kenya is liable. Now, before I continue reading the judgment, don't forget that the judge that is reading this thing, it is even the Kenyan government that is paying that judge, and that judge has, the courage to deliver judgment even against his own country. Look at what the judge is saying right here. Now let's continue the reading, the excerpt from the reading of the judgment, how the judge nailed the Kenyan government and the Nigerian government. So the judge said, fundamental right for which government of Kenya is liable, says, both based on the above conclusions, the court makes the following declarations and orders it considers appropriate. A declaration is hereby issued that the abduction of Nnamdi Kanu, holding him in incommunicado confinement, torturing him, and denying him food, water, medication, and other basic necessities, was a violation of his rights and fundamental freedoms. A declaration is hereby issued that the abduction and subsequent forcible removal of Nnamdi, apologies if I pronounce that wrongly, Nnamdi Kanu from Kenya to Nigeria was in violation of the laws of Kenya, its rights and fundamental freedoms, including freedom of movement and security of the person guaranteed by the Constitution of Kenya 2010, and therefore unconstitutional and illegal. An order for compensation is hereby issued awarding Mr. Nnamdi Kanu general damages of 10 million Kenyan shillings, that is equivalent to 120 million naira in Nigeria. So the Kenyan government is owing Kanu 120 million naira against the Attorney General of the damage, that the damages of 10 million Kenyan shillings is against the Attorney General of Kenya on behalf of the government of Kenya for the violation of Mr. Nnamdi Kanu's constitutional rights and fundamental freedoms. What I just read to you is the excerpt from the judgment that was delivered in Kenya, and you can see how the judge was thorough in delivering that judgment. I think the Buhari government really caused an embarrassment to Nigeria and Nigerians, because if you look at it, Buhari government is in the habit of pampering people that are from the Hausa Fulani ethnic stock, but usually go against other tribes. You will recall that the Buhari government also sought, Sunday Igboho's rendition to Nigeria, but was resisted by the Benin Republic government at that point in time, because the Yoruba people have some strong ties with Benin Republic. There's a lot of Yorubas in Benin Republic. So the Yoruba elders were able to rally the president of Benin Republic at that time, and they were able to give some explanation that favored Sunday Igboho, and that's why Sunday Igboho was not brought back to Nigeria. But the Buhari government mounted pressure, and who knows whether that was why, whether it's part of the reason that the border that between Nigeria and Benin Republic wasn't open till Muhammadu Buhari left office. But it is interesting to know that while all this was going on to Nnamdi Kanu, while Sunday Igboho was being pursued relentlessly by the Nigerian government, armed men and bandits were being pampered, and that is the legacy that Muhammadu Buhari has left for himself. So kudos to the Kenyan court for not only declaring that Nnamdi Kanu's extraordinary rendition is illegal, but for also having the courage to award 10 million Kenyan shillings to Nnamdi Kanu. I think that is fair in that regard. And again, I must give adequate kudos to Nnamdi Kanu's counsel. Let me tell you what happened. Nnamdi Kanu, shout out to his family and friends, because it seems that Nnamdi Kanu have some good and reliable people around him that have been standing by him through the trying times, in the sense that when they were in Kenya, they hired Professor Patrice Lumumba. You see, if you know Professor Patrice Lumumba, and I'll try to attach his photo on the screen. Some of you may not know him as regards his name, but you must have seen that face before if you are conversant with international relations and politics and all these speeches across Africa. He's an erudite man, and the family and friends of Nnamdi Kanu was able to hire him. You can imagine how much they would have paid to hire the man, and the man was one of Nnamdi Kanu's counsel. And if you know Professor Patrice Lumumba, you know that he's a very brilliant guy. So he was one of Nnamdi Kanu's counsel, and he was the one that took the battle to the Kenyan judiciary, and he got judgment against his country in favor of Nnamdi Kanu. Kudos to the Kenyan government as well for at least giving room for some transparency. But it would be great if the Kenyan government now pays Nnamdi Kanu the 10 million Kenyan shillings, because as it is right now, the Kenyan government is owing Nnamdi Kanu. And I just hope that the Tinubu government as well will learn from this victory and free Nnamdi Kanu. If Sunday Igboho is walking free, I believe that Nnamdi Kanu deserves to be free. The government should channel its energy to some of these bandits, terrorists, S-men, and Nnamdi Kanu as well should kind of like behave himself in an appropriate way, in such a way that it doesn't violate the law. It is a two-way thing. You can't just put all the blame on Nigerian government or on Nnamdi Kanu. You have to put it on both sides, and everybody should act according to the law. It's been an interesting time with you on this episode of Politics with your short blog, Dr. Omosoladeji. Subscribe, turn on your notification button, catch up in my past video. See you in my next video. I love you all sincerely.